He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is the Alex Marlow Show.
Welcome to the Marlow Show. It is not a Hawaiian shirt Friday. It is a suit and tie Friday because we are working and we are getting results for you. Welcome to anyone who is new. We're at our highest rating ever on Apple, which is very exciting. And a lot of new people coming into the show, checking out some of my work because of the release of Breaking the Law, which I have a big announcement for you guys. We are getting results. 3 days in the book, we had our first investigation. Cannot believe it. Cannot believe this. The Department of Justice opening a criminal investigation into New York Attorney General Letitia James. I'll tell you what I wrote in the book, Breaking the Law. I call for Tish James to be prosecuted for conspiracy against rights. That was what I called for in the book. And then what we learned today, earlier in the day, that the DOJ looking into Tish James for deprivation of rights. So it seems like basically the same thing. I think directionally, especially since I'm not an attorney, I think it was over the target on this one in a major way. And conspiracy requires more than one person, so maybe that's the distinction. We'll get more details as time goes on, but 3 days into the book's release, and we're already seeing results. I can't believe it. I'm over the moon, thrilled about this. Absolutely, Tish James, from my research in this book, was I would say the person who was the most aggressive in her pursuit of lawfare. And what I want to do to start the show today before we get in the rest of the news, so I want to get into the 8 reasons why I called for the prosecution of Tish James. Break this down for you. A core portion of Breaking the Law is investigating this case, her case, where I believe what she was engaged in was injuring, oppressing, threatening, and intimidating an individual, that individual being Donald Trump, using the government to do so, which is, of course, blatantly illegal. And it is the exact behavior, this exact behavior was, I believe, the most militant of any of the lawfare that I saw during all of my research. And I'm going to give you the 8 reasons why. Those of you who forget the case, this was the one where she was looking at the property values of Trump, essentially, that he was falsifying these records to try to, I guess, bilk banks, which was completely implausible that any of the banks, it was a victimless crime. That's the chapter of the book I call the victimless crime. But I'll get into that in a second. The first thing, my first example of why I called for an investigation into her of all people is because this was a targeted prosecution. Tish James said when she was on the campaign trail, I guess maybe she'd won even before she'd become New York Attorney General, we're going to definitely sue him, referring to Donald Trump. We're going to be a real pain in the ass. He's going to know my name personally. That's what she said on the way in. So she assumes office, and this was, I have the clip, I'm linking this up at Breitbart.com in a big article on this today. You can see it. It's like an Instagram video with some person at a party. She's just celebrating, goo-goo-eyed, just almost like just online trash talk, but she's the Attorney General representing a state. She says, we will use every area of the law to investigate President Trump and his business transactions and that of his family as well. This was a case where they wrapped up a lot of family members, too many, and eventually they had to actually kind of take some of the family members off of the rolls and let them free from this persecution. But note that James barely pays lip service to rising criminality in New York, which has seen just huge upticks in crime during the time that she's been Attorney General. But during that time, she's been narrowly focused on Trump. And I might add, also hosting drag queen story readathons. She did this. Is she childless? I think she's childless too. She had a drag queen story hour readathon in New York City in 2023 for the LGBTQ+. So this is grooming of children for drag people. And that is this is where I'm saying that the T's and the pluses, L's and G's, you got to get away from those T's and pluses. You got to, there's no other choice. You got to get rid of them. So my number 2 reason why I think that she needed to be prosecuted here is because she did prosecute what is a victimless crime. I call the chapter's a victimless crime when I go through it. But the crux of her suit against the Trumps is that they undervalued property to gain better loans, better insurance policies, better tax rates. So who are these victims? Who are the organizations that were victimized by Trump? Apparently, I guess, it's the corporations, these multi-billion-dollar financial institutions that loaned him money. So the corporations must have filed a complaint about Trump, right? No, they did not. They filed no complaints. There were no actual complaints. So they supposedly victimized banks and lenders, liked working with Trump. They loved working with Trump, if anything. and they wanted to have repeat business with him. So theoretically, there should have been some harm done to someone, to something, and there's no evidence that anyone was harmed whatsoever. So, and I looked into this. This seems to be completely unprecedented, that there was a civil case when there were no complaints against the defendant in the case. So it was the first time in state history, at least that I could find, that someone had been accused of fraud when no one had suggested or no entity had suggested that we'd actually been harmed. So right there, I mean, how could this possibly go on? So, well, you had a left-wing judge, Judge Engoron, very weird guy. I get into him and his history in the book. I know I won't do a ton on today's show, but another left-wing guy, just a regular New York liberal, not impressive, and no jury on this case. So that's how this stuff goes on. All right, so the third reason Tish James needs to be prosecuted is because of the blatant undervaluing of Mar-a-Lago, which justified the whole abuse. So the case hinged on this, I guess, appraiser for the area in Palm Beach that had assessed the value of Mar-a-Lago at $18 to $28 million. Okay, this is a appraiser who's assessing things for tax purposes so that you assess a property tax. There's nothing to do with the price of the real estate. And I go through what could Mar-a-Lago actually be worth. Trump valued it, I think, as $739 million. He told me personally he thinks it could be $1 billion, maybe $1.5 billion. But here's the thing, is that James was suggesting, and Engoron, the judge, really enforced this, that Trump had way overvalued the property. And here's the problem, though. If you look at other real estate, comparable real estate in the area, 1 acre residences around that area in Palm Beach, $40 million about for something like that. If you can get to 2 acres, which are not as many of those, $150 to $200 million is typically what you might see it for when it's listed. So how big is Mar-a-Lago? 17 acres. So you can do the math on that. Incredibly rare, incredibly historic. And the court's valuation of Mar-a-Lago is probably about 1/50th of what it's actually worth. So this is certainly colloquially what we would call criminal to undervalue it this way and to use that to justify the harassment of Trump. But maybe that's literally criminal because it is so clearly blatant manipulation and trying to come up with a fact pattern just to find the conclusion, to match the conclusion that Trump is a liar and Trump has been fraudulent. So they said specifically Trump had overvalued the property by 2,300%, so 2,300%. We don't really know what it's worth until Trump tries to sell it, but this is a historic thing. It's completely unique, touches both waters there. That's what Mar-a-Lago means. It's a sea to lake. Is that what it is? I think it's something like that. I guess sea to lake. And the only property in the area that's like that, clearly worth close to $1 billion, maybe more. At a minimum, I think I saw the most conservative estimate was you could maybe list it for at a minimum of 300 something million. So, and they want it to be 18 to 28 million. Obviously, that's fraudulent. It's fraudulent. So how could that be allowed? It's been a whirlwind, and I've been fueled by coffee. What else? And none other than Crockett coffee. Keeps me alert, and it tastes great. Roasted to perfection in small batches, on purpose by experts who love the taste of great coffee. Roasted in our nation's heartland and delivered fresh to your home. Crockett Coffee is also an anti-communist, pro-American brand founded by Buck Sexton, Clay Travis, terrific broadcasters. I was just on their show the other day and had a great time with them. And they're smart. Dark roast, mild roast, light roast, decaf, mushroom organic blend. I have not tried that. I've got to try that. Got the K-Cups going. It's really a quality cup, and it is good people. Even some of the proceeds go to Tunnel to Towers Foundation because people Crockett Coffee, they never forget. And right now, you use Alex promo code at checkout. Use the code Alex. First 20% off your order. That's crockettcoffee.com. Use my name, Alex, as the promo code, and you'll get 20% off. All right. The fourth reason I think that the Trump administration needs to prosecute Tish James is the one I've been talking about a lot this week, which is the illicit White House visits. While this is going on, Tish James goes to the White House on at least 3 occasions, 3 that are documented in the records. And we're supposed to believe that she's only there to, 1, celebrate Ketanji Brown Jackson, 2, meet with Kamala Harris and others attorneys general, and 3, honor Black women at an event specifically for that. There's no record that anything she discussed had to do with Trump's trials, but it's just so far-fetched to me that someone whose sole purpose, who ran on getting Trump, has announced publicly that she's getting Trump. I read in the book, I think she's the only person who might not even deny it if called on it. If asked, isn't your only purpose here to get Trump? She might be the one who says yes. I think everyone else would lie and say, no, we like doing other stuff too. We like law and order. She might not even lie about it. She might just say, yeah, I'm here to get Trump. So is it possible that we don't know what was discussed during those meetings, and maybe she piggybacked some of those the parties, cocktail hours with something that was more explicitly directed at getting Trump? I think so. I think that's what we're going to find. And I spoke about this with President Trump personally in March when I went to visit him in the Oval Office. And he said flat out he believes she was there coordinating with the White House about the case. So this has got to be a major focus of the DOJ's investigation, and I say this for two reasons. First of all, just in a vacuum, this is where I think a lot of the most interesting material is going to come from when it comes into looking into Tish James's impropriety. And second of all, I think that this will also set the precedent that we can now start looking into, the Nathan Wade situation, where Nathan Wade with the Fonnie Willis case, well, why was he at the White House so often? You go to the Reid Hoffman situation, where Reid Hoffman, who was funding the E. Jean Carroll lawsuit, he kept going to the White House. We can look into that. And then talk about Matthew Colangelo, who's number 3 guy at the DOJ, who went on to be the ringer in the Alvin Bragg case. We can look into that. And the list goes on. How about Jeff DeSantis, who worked for Joe Biden and then went to Georgia and was part of the prosecution of Donald Trump down there? There are a lot of questions. There's all these White House connections. And so this is a really important place to start. And I hope the DOJ does so. And Trump reminded me of this, which is really important. He was under a gag order during this time, so he couldn't push back publicly as much as he would like. He did a number of times. He violated the gag order a lot, and I write about this in the book. He got like a dozen plus fines for doing it. But, he's theoretically not supposed to be violating gag orders, and there's always a mixed bag in the media with that when you do that. But he felt like he couldn't really publicly defend himself because he kept getting gagged. Okay, so that was number 4. Number 5. So this is a more of a nuanced one, but I think is really essential to just the general vibe and feel of the lawfare against Trump. And that this was a civil trial, but it was treated as basically like a criminal trial. The way I describe it, as a criminal trial in civil court. I regard this as a dead giveaway that Tish James was not attempting to be fair, and she was carrying out the case as if the Trump family were crooks, even though this was not a criminal case. It was a civil case. So there's a few distinctions between civil and criminal law, but I don't want to get too wonky here. I'll just give you the one that matters is that criminal cases are generally prosecuted by officials who represent a state, country, some other jurisdiction, and civil cases are brought by an aggrieved party that believes they're the victim of something, some wrongdoing. In this instance, what does this case look like to you? Obviously, it looks like the state is bringing the case against some criminal, some bad guy, some nefarious scoundrel. So that's what New York Attorney General Tish James was doing in this case. So treating it like it was criminal. This was not a civil case where some aggrieved party was trying to get some money. So again, no one alleged wrongdoing. In fact, the opposite. These banks, and I went through all the details on this, they regarded Trump as a whale. They thought he was an ideal business partner. He made every payment on time. He paid every dollar he was owed. The financial institutions made every nickel that they were expecting to make, they got from Trump. Trump actually told me he had a tendency to pay back loans early, even though that would incur penalties in some of his deals, because he wanted to make sure that the banks always had their money. Because he was aware of this. He's a savvy guy. And I think he was afraid that perhaps one day it could be used against him if he wasn't on time. And so I think he'd already thought about this stuff and planned ahead. And then Tish James has taken the position that Trump not only conned them, but I guess the state or the citizens of the state were somehow injured by this. So the whole tenor of the suit was that Trump is an evildoer and needed to be punished. And that is just not okay. And I don't know how you legislate such a thing because it's so rare. It's so novel. And this is a theme with all the cases in breaking the law, is that there's always a novel interpretation of the law at play. There's not one case that's an open and shut case. The closest thing to that was the documents case, where really the arguments against that one on Trump's behalf are lots of CIA heads, vice presidents, senators had classified documents, hadn't declassified them. Hillary Clinton, of course, Secretary of State. And, were never held to account. And then the other argument was the whole prosecution with Jack Smith was unconstitutional. But that was the only one where maybe there was a precedent that was remotely familiar to people. Everything else, this is all created your new laws. And that's my number 6, creating a new law to get Trump. Tish James was essentially creating a new law relying on New York Executive Law Section 6312, which I break down. I don't want to get too wonky, and I try not to cite a lot of specific laws because I'm trying to make this readable because I want you guys to get the big points in the book. But this gives broad power to investigate and prosecute civil fraud against consumers. It's usually used to go after con men who are swindling grannies out of their savings, not real estate developers who are trying to sign big agreements with sophisticated banks who are fiduciaries. These are people who do due diligence. They have the smartest minds in the game, making sure they don't mess up in this regard. And not to mention, these banks got every dime they were due on time, and they all wanted to do business with Trump again. Trump gave a great quote to me when I met with him in the Oval Office on this. He said, "They tried me on a statute like it was consumer fraud, like I stole a refrigerator, okay?" And I mean, just like he stole a refrigerator. That's how they're treating him. They're inventing new stuff. You applying the law uniquely and more harshly than ever before, which is a nice segue to my number 7, a really big one here, really, really big. This is my number 7 reason why Tish James needs to be prosecuted. She administered a cruel and unusual punishment, unconstitutional, blatantly. Trump was assessed initially a $464 million fine for a victimless crime. This is not just something that's confiscatory. This is appalling that this would be allowed in this country. It's that excessive. So luckily, the New York Supreme Court Appellate Division was able to reduce his bond to $175 million, a mere $175 million. And when I asked Trump about this, I said, where's that money? And he says they still have it. This is breaking news right now on the Marlow Show. They still have the New York, whatever court he had to file this to, has $175 million of Trump's money right now. He's president of the United States. They have it. They have the bond. So, at least according to Trump, what he told me in March, which I assume is fresh here. So, of course, Trump has got to appeal this. And I hope the Supreme Court acknowledges it's a cruel and unusual punishment. The Eighth Amendment's excessive fines clause, I want to read this to you because I think this is really important. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. Nothing in this says that this has to be specific to criminal or civil matters. So I hope Trump's attorneys are using this argument. I hope the DOJ is taking this dead seriously, because there's nothing here in the Eighth Amendment that suggests that you can't apply cruel and unusual punishment in a civil case. No other president in U.S. history could have survived this type of penalty. This is the definition of a cruel and unusual punishment, flat out, and they still got his money. Totally bogus. Totally, it should be. Isn't this criminal? I say this as a non-attorney. Doesn't sound criminal to you that this would be allowed to go on, and that has to work its way through the court. And then, last but not least, this is the biggest charge, figuratively speaking, that I'm making, and the one I think is the most relevant and the connective tissue through everything I document in Breaking the Law is what Tish James engaged in here is election interference, blatantly. This case should not have been allowed to go on. The fact that it took place, though, during the middle of an election, that's a disgrace for this country. We knew she sought to destroy Trump. We knew she was willing to abuse her power to do this. We knew that the judge, and there was no jury, were not going to stop her. But the fact that the most powerful law enforcement officer in one of the most powerful states in the union, a state where Donald Trump was a resident, the most famous resident for so many decades, could pursue a guy on nakedly political grounds, administer excessive penalties, and to do this at a moment where the guy is running for president of the United States, this is the outrage of all outrage. I can't think of something more outrageous in the book than what Tish James did. And the fact that this is the first one, 3 days after the book's out, DOJ is in there and they're on it. This is a great sign. So Trump's got to win this appeal. He's got to get his money back. But Tish James ought to be prosecuted for what I wrote as conspiracy against rights. But what was her quote? Or what was DOJ's quote? Deprivation of rights. Fine. Get him. Let's go get him. Very heartening. And the fact that we piggyback this on top of the Jack Smith investigations, it just is so great. Tish James was fond of saying over and over again, no one is above the law. And that is what we're seeing today. So this is Misty pulled a great clip of MSNBC talking about this. Check this out.
There is nothing scarier for a citizen to get a subpoena or find out that they're being investigated by a federal criminal grand jury. It's terrifying. And here's why. Grand jury investigations sweep broadly. They gather terabytes of information, and they're very efficient at going through it. And the problem there for people is that they may be investigating issue number one and then stumble across never before known issue number two when going through all those documents.
You know why I love this point so much? I love this point so much because this is how they got Trump so many times. They got him so many times where they would come up with some excuse to investigate him and then they'd find something else. The example I cite in the book that's so clear, the one criminal conviction for Donald Trump, the convicted felon, would not have happened if not for the fake Russia collusion hoax. They got evidence from Michael Cohen that they would not have gotten had Cohen not been investigated as part of the Russian collusion probe, which never should have happened. So that's the principle at work that got Trump. So now it can be used to get Tish James and who else? We don't know. But we're going to see.
That is why if somebody is the subject, the target of a grand jury investigation, that is not a good sign. So given that the federal government has such tremendous power to investigate, Letitia James should be very concerned. Not that she necessarily did anything wrong, but because that kind of scrutiny of financial records, of business records, everything going back probably years might yield something that the government finds interesting.
Missy, we got to track this guy down, and I want to get him a copy of the book, get him a signed copy. I'll highlight all the portions of breaking the law so he can see exactly all the things Tish James did wrong. Maybe I'll tweet this article at him when this comes out at Breitbart News, where I lay out all this stuff for you guys. But this is as exciting as it gets for me. It's why you do it. It's why you do it. And I don't know for sure if I get full credit but I'll tell you that the Justice Department reached out to us at Breitbart first. We got the scoop on it. We broke the story. I'm sure I'll hear from them directly. The DOJ, I've been a busy day, so I haven't talked to them yet specifically, but we're a big part of it here. And we're catalyzing major investigations and resetting the minds of people on the right that we're fighting fire with fire. And it is a beautiful day in America. So awesome. And they couldn't have started with a worse villain, in my opinion. All right. Great time to talk about my friends at the American Beverage Association. Last night I was checking out the new audiobook for Breaking the Law. It sounds incredible. If you're an audiobook listener, Paul Fowley, who's my director there, he does just an amazing job. He's in all my audiobooks, and this one sounds absolutely pristine. So if you would rather hear my sonorous tones read the book to you and really perform it, hear all my Trump voice and stuff like that, please do that. And you know what I was doing? I was loading up my Diet Cokes and my Diet Dr. Peppers, getting ready for the weekend. It was a pre-ken last night. I'm a big pre-ken guy. So think about all these drinks you love, the ones you got to have at your barbecue, in your break room. These iconic brands are part of the American story and have been for over 100 years. With everyone talking about American jobs lately, these companies behind these beverages have been walking the walk the whole time. America's beverage companies are making American products with American workers in America's hometowns. They employ over 275,000 men and women in all 50 states, and they are people who show up every day, do the work, and deliver for our economy and communities. You can see for yourself everything they're doing at wedeliverforamerica.org. wedeliverforamerica.org. I will tell you guys, supporting my advertisers is a great way to support the show, keep the show going. My friends and colleagues at Breitbart wrote a very nice self-aggrandizing post about the success of the show lately and how is it rising all the iTunes charts. Check this out. It's whoever wrote this is clearly very appreciative of me in the Breitbart newsroom. Marlow hosts the podcast solo and is staffed with one part-time producer, shout out Misty. Yet the Alex Marlow Show has vaulted over podcasts from CNN, The Atlantic, MSNBC, PBS, The Lincoln Project, Fox News, The Wall Street Journal, and left-wing podcasting giant Crooked Media, among many others. Very cool. So thanks to you guys. So thanks for being a part of this, and hopefully bigger and better things ahead. All right. Other things that I want to bring up on the broadcast today before I let all of you get to your weekends, or maybe you're already on your weekend enjoying this. But the deadline looms for these Texas House Democrats who need to return to work and face the music that we are going to redistrict. This is time to stay strong. Someone's got to explain to me, what is the alternative to gerrymandering? What is the alternative to the power and party draws up districts? There's no neutral bodies anymore. You can't trust them. You can't have some sort of council of elders, because the council of elders will be staffed by whoever's in power. So you have how are we supposed to draw up districts? The left has over half a dozen states where there's no Republican congressman at all. So we're allowed to, the victor goes the spoils. We're allowed to draw the districts however we want. And we're just getting started. We're not just going to do Texas. We're going to go all over the country. And then we're going to redo the census, as Trump wants to do, because it's not fair that states like California get extra seats because of illegal aliens. The fact that we let in the illegal aliens in the country, they're mere residents. They're not actually citizens of the country. And they're allowed to add to the census, to the voter rolls. No way. That is not allowed. It should not be okay. We should redo it. Absolutely redo the census. And let's get some fairness. Let's get some justice here. So the Dems fled the state, and they don't want to be at work, and they went to gerrymandered states like Illinois, Massachusetts to hang out, I guess trying to avoid the face of the music. But they're going to have to come back. So I guess their paychecks are being held, their budgets are being cut, but it's all fun. We get all the details of Breitbart News, but it's great. It's really fun. And I love to see the aggression. And this is what I want. I want the aggressive posture, the aggressive moves. Trump's ordering federal law enforcement to patrol D.C., plagued by violent crime for far too long. He says, another one, I absolutely love this. I lived in D.C. and I had a great time there. This is an iconic city. This is a city with our history, with our monuments, with incredible museums that are funded by the taxpayers. It's also got very cool topography and cool, parts of the year, I mean, the summers are miserable, but the falls are incredible. The springs are incredible. Why not try to beautify this city and to make this city a place that is a great tourist destination, not just for Americans, but people all over the world? This is the city that is our example to the world what America stands for. And we can't just roll over and accept that because Democrats are in charge because they're so dependent on the federal government that you get all these sort of government and government adjacent employees make up so much of the city, thus Democrats. Why do we want to have a crime-ridden, disgusting, filthy capital for America? We're above that. And I don't want to wash my hands of it. It's even different than places like New York. Like, you guys know I'm sort of accelerationist with New York spiral out of control to some degree. If I thought there's a realistic chance of saving it, I would go for it. There is a realistic chance of saving D.C., and that's if Donald Trump comes in and cleans up the crime and then starts getting stuff in order beyond that. So whatever Trump can do to exert some control over D.C., he should. Whatever is legal, don't do anything illegal, but anything that Trump can legally do, legally, we do it legally, then I'm all for it. I really believe that if we have a bigger federal presence in D.C., it will be an alternative to the Democrats destroying the city. And isn't that what we want? Let's keep doing the winning. Let's not opt out. It's a big deal. We're not opting out anymore. We're getting aggressive. We're solving problems. We're not just whining. We're coming up with solutions. And whenever you do this, you get rewarded with all sorts of all sorts of hand-wringing and panic from the left, which creates more content from me. Like Rosie O'Donnell, who's predicted that ABC will cancel The View to appease Trump. Now, I love this stuff because I liken this. I had this speech, and I put it up as yesterday's podcast, where I was talking about how the left is now elevating the Rosie O'Donnells of the world, and the right, we're co-opting Sydney Sweeney. And we're going to take the hot girls in blue jeans, and they're going to have the defectors who are old and over the hill and are not funny comedians and are the least likable people, androgynous. That's their representatives in the culture. Our representatives in the culture are fun and hot. And I think this is so big, and they can't stop stepping on these rakes. They keep doing it. It's one after the next all day, every day. It feels like that's their mode. And for whatever reason, they can't convince themselves to stop. And we should be celebrating this. We should be embracing it, and we should be very grateful, and we should keep trying to trigger them. And this is where Trump is so good. Trump is so good at trying to trigger people. And if we can do it effectively, and we could do it, I think, judiciously, can't do it all the time, but if you do it judiciously, then it's going to be great. All right, last one that I really wanted to bring up before I sign off for today. There's rumors going around that Steve Bannon is going to be running for president. Now, I have rekindled my relationship with Steve just this week. He's been a big booster breaking the law. I'm very grateful for a couple of war room hits. I think the plan is to go back on tomorrow and I'm not sorry, not tomorrow, next week, and do maybe like a big lecture or lesson on some of the big things for his war room audience. So hopefully we'll get that done. That would be very cool to do some sort of a big deep dive for his crowd. He's got a really big audience and a base audience and an audience that I think drives a lot of the grassroots momentum. And so time I run for president, I will tell you, I would take him seriously in this regard. I know Steve better than anyone, and I know that he was considering running for president in the past. This is not the first time he'd be considering it. Now, he was asked by whether or not this is real. I don't know who asked him this, but someone asked him this, some reporter, and his response was amusing. He said Trump 2028, because Steve is on this kick. He actually wants Trump to run. But you guys know my biases here. I'm a huge fan of the vice president. I think he's in the driver's seat. You've heard my prediction. My prediction is there will be a brokering of J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio, and that will be the ticket, and they will decide that way ahead of time, and there'll basically not be a primary. That's my official prediction. But as a news person, I would love to see a primary. I would love to see people's blades sharpened. JD's terrific. He's a young guy, and I feel like if there was a primary, I think people only get smarter and sharper, more compelling. We dominate the news cycle more. And so I think it would be somewhat of a shame if we just had a coronation this time around, as great as JD is. And JD's my guy. He's the guy I recommended to Trump to be vice president. I gave him one name, JD Vance. That was it. So you guys know this. But I still am kind of into it. So I've not spoken to Steve about this exactly, but I will. And I'll probably have to bring him on the show, and we'll talk about it some more. But he would really like to see Trump run again. And that's something that I've considered too. I could get behind that if it was legal. I'm not seeing how it is, though. I think Trump had his first term hijacked to a degree that I, on an emotional and personal level, would be completely fine with a third Trump term. And I just don't know constitutionally how we could pull it off. It feels like we'd have to amend the Constitution to do it. So, and I know I saw Steve asked about that part, and he said, we're working on it. So I got to ask him what his plan is. So we got to do that, and we'll have to do that on the show at some point. But I would take Steve literally, at least for the time being, that he could run, and he could potentially run a really interesting campaign, because he's got a super smart guy, super good in his feet, super aggressive, fearless. So I'm very interested to see if he could shake up the race, which as of now is looking like a coronation, especially if JD can broker something with Marco to be the vice president. I don't know. I don't see. There's a lot of people who are pushing Marco as maybe a better candidate at the top of the ticket, but I don't know if there's enough. But the votes matter. It can't just be hype and buzz. So, and it feels like as of now, the voters are overwhelmingly with JD, which of course I'm good with. I'm way good with, but I like when there's more debate and fighting and sparring. So let's say sparring. I want to see some more sparring first. So that'd be pretty cool to see. All right. That'll be it for today's show. I will say one last point. Breaking the law is going to change the country if everyone reads it. And it is, if you feel like you're going to get it, now is the best week to get it, because if it hits bestseller lists next week, which we'll find out, and if it gets high up on those lists, the better it does initially, the easier it is to build momentum for it. So if you want to support me and support my work, this really helps me get to the next level. And so that is a personal plea to you, that if you're thinking about it, if you're thinking about maybe getting a second copy for someone, today's the day to do it. Do it, knock it out. Audiobook. I don't care where you get it or how you get it, but it would be great to get that level of support. And I've been really embraced by the response has been overwhelming. And I've got a lot of big media lined up in the future. So we'll be doing a Don Jr. show. I'm doing that on Monday. I got Laura Trump on Tuesday. We'll be doing Levin show the following week. So there's a lot of big stuff that's cooking for me in terms of trying to get the word out. Glenn, back on Monday, big shows, trying to get the word out. A lot of my Salem colleagues I haven't hit yet. And I want the word out there, but the momentum, you want to muzzle velocity on this. And I'm trying to pump this as best I can. And those of you in the audience who are interested, it's going to be a good read. You're going to like it. Like, I promise you, you'll like it. I promise you, you'll enjoy having it around. And God willing, it's going to be a historic precedent. If today's DOJ announcement is an indicator, maybe we see a half a dozen investigations based off of some of the stuff I found in the book. So God willing, and hopefully people will take my recommendation seriously, and I think they are. I think it's already happening. All right, that'll be today's show. Thanks to producer Misty for all the hard work. Thanks to John Cassio, who's doing all the great work on my social media pages. Nicely done, John. Appreciate that. All the posting on my social. I've got backup these days. And to all of you in the audience, welcome. If you're new, please tell 10,000 friends and family members. And feel free to email me, aloha@alexmarlow.com, if you would like to correspond. Give me any recommendations you got, recipes, criticisms. I don't care. I read everything that you send me, and I enjoy it a lot. All right. Talk to you next week.